Jesse, what's up, man?
I like
Now
the way
you
you
clap
did.
us
Yeah,
in.
yeah,
2 claps. What's up, man?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm really honored that you invited me out here, and I'm able to spend some time at your place, and even just our conversation before we hit start was awesome. I'm kind of wishing we could have hit record on the conversation there, too. Sometimes that's where you catch the best stuff.
Yeah. Well, I just didn't want to jump into it. I felt like you came all the way here, man. I wanted to learn a little bit about you and your family and what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can tell you we've really been inspired by the way that you lead your life, and also, I guess it's not independent, but the way that you lead your family. Yeah, I don't think that's and also I think that is the deal, is you lead your family and yourself very, very well, and I'm just really curious, how you do that. That's what I want to unpack today, how you do that with everything that you have going on and all of your enthusiasm and different ventures and projects, and yet you still find time to lead your family well.
Well, first of all, it's a priority. It's we worked really hard to bring kids into the world. It didn't come so easy for us, I thought you just it's so easy.
Did the deed,
you do the deed, and then there comes a child 9 months later. It doesn't work that way. So I feel tremendous responsibility around that. It's a priority for me, obviously, and we work really hard on it. And man, we have 4 kids, and I also think of it this way, Ryan. At the end of the day, just to get right into it off the top.
Yeah, man.
You see all this stuff on social media, and you get an idea and of all these different perceptions of what's supposed to be or this and that. And people show highlights. Maybe it's an actor at the Oscars, or it's a basketball player that wins in the post-game interview, and you see him in that moment. But at the end of all that, when the dust settles, everybody goes home. At the end of the day, your head hits your pillow at your home. And if home isn't right, regardless of how much everything your bank account is, or this is happening, or how many followers you have, it's not, something's broken. It's just not going to register. So I think having that home dynamic is really important,
I agree. I think, at least for me, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but it seems to me that men are better in the corporate world, maybe better at their finances, better at their fitness than doing the home stuff, because sometimes doing the home thing isn't really quantifiable. Like, how do you measure being a good dad or being a good husband? And so we gravitate, at least I do, towards the things that are X's and O's and numbers and quantifiable. I have more followers, I have less debt, I have more in my bank account, I have more business, versus how do you measure the engagement with your family?
It's true. They say, one of my friends said to me that one of the tests of success is if your older children still want to hang out with you when they're older. So that maybe that's one way to measure it. You're right. It's not measurable, but I think I like to ask myself a very simple question. So I'll ask myself in any situation, would I recommend myself as, and then fill in the blank. So would I recommend myself as a dad? Would I recommend myself as a husband? Would I recommend myself as a leader, as a boss, as a training partner for when I work out with somebody, anything? And if the answer is no, why? So that's a really simple question to get right down to and I ask myself that a lot. I travel. I have 4 different kids. They're very different in personalities. As a dad, you think the hardest part for me to be a dad is to understand that my kids are on their own journey. So if I like to go outside and play basketball till midnight when I was a kid, and my kids want to stay home and play Fortnite, they're not me. And as frustrating as that might be for me, and of course I'm encouraging them not to get on devices or that kind of stuff, they are on their own journey. And they're not replicating the childhood that I had. And that's been hard. That was a hard adjustment for me. I figured I have a kid. They're going to be just like me.
Right. And why aren't they?
Yeah. And, I'm outgoing. I'm an extrovert. My son's an introvert. That dynamic is very interesting. And, you just don't think about that when you're starting a family, of those kind of nuances. And they all we were talking about it before we hit start on the podcast, that we both have kids that are dyslexic.
Mm-hmm.
And, I never even heard of dyslexia really or anything like that when I was growing up.
It wasn't an issue.
Well,
it probably was. It just wasn't talked about.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're dealing with those kind of things. So it's just been a really interesting ride, man. And I love it. I love the unexpected. I love the challenge. We both love challenges. I love the challenge of it. And I love the process.
How do you avoid fooling yourself? Because I think that's a powerful question. Would I recommend myself as fill in the blank? But also I think it's easy to justify and rationalize and excuse our poor performance. And if it's just us critiquing ourselves, like how do you not fool yourself into thinking that you're doing better than maybe you actually are?
Well, I have a good soundboard in my wife. And, I think one of the things that I've struggled with is I don't take criticism well. Like we're met, like a lot of times we're like, well, what do you mean I'm not good at that? Or we're very defensive.
Sure.
My wife takes criticism very well. She takes feedback very well. And she also gives it very well. So she'll let me know, she keeps me in check. Even the other day, she was talking about, she said, you really need to go spend some time reading with our oldest son. It's like you invest a lot and you're not talking his love language. You're playing sports and you're pushing this and this and this. He wants to spend some one-on-one time. He wants you to see how he's progressing. And it was really good advice. And it actually, that one little switch made a big difference. So, I start with myself as the first layer, but then I'm also kind of try to be more aware of getting feedback, but also reading the room and taking it not about me, but how are my kids or those closest to me, what am I intuitively, how do I feel, they're grading me.
Yeah, that's a good. You talk about the reading is like my wife will do the same thing, and sometimes like I don't want to read. Like I don't want to. I want to go outside and play basketball or jump on the trampoline, and then I have to catch myself thinking, okay, but it's not about you. If it was about you, then you wouldn't really be working on this relationship. So maybe you don't want to read, but you do want to spend time with your kid.
Right.
And if that's going to be the most meaningful thing in the moment, then do that.
Right. No, 100%. 100%. I'm much bigger. I'm bigger on the trampoline than I am on the reading.
Yeah, for sure. I think most of us probably would be. You talk about challenge too. One of the things that I've noticed that you do is you literally run towards challenge. Is that something that you've always embraced? Is there times in your life where you haven't liked to be challenged, and if you had to fight against that, or has that just always been in your nature?
Yeah, I always like to be challenged. I don't know where it comes from. I think my parents always encouraged me. They gave me a really long leash when I was growing up. They didn't say, you're going to be, they let me, my mom was just like, try everything. When I went to college, she gave me probably the best advice that I got and at that age. And she was like, you don't know what you want to be when you grow up. Go to every event, everything the school has to offer, sign up for every, speaking lecture, intramural event, and just learn, see what you go towards. So that spirit was with me as a child, even before that, where my mom and dad encouraged me to, try just everything, really. And where I am in my life now, I talk about this all the time, was about building my life resume more than my work resume, is really a theme that carries over from that. Because the more you experience, the more you have to offer. And my parents really pushed experiences. They really emphasized experiential stuff as a kid versus anything else. And so I was always outside. I was always in the, going to stuff and signing up for races, even if I stunk. And that's carried over into the way that I parent as well.
Do you feel like there's ever this is one of the things I was thinking about with all that you have going on in different lanes and avenues? It'd be very easy from the outside looking in to think like this guy's all over the place, right? Is there a theme in all that you do? And it sounds like you're talking about building your life resume, but is there ever a downside in doing all of these different things versus being maybe more hyper focused on one particular lane?
I think everybody has different operating systems. and I operate best with multiple balls in the air. I'm highly ADD. I'm all over the place, and I need that action. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I need that action, so I need multiple balls. My wife's the other way around. She has a company. Her company Spanx. She's a mile deep. No distractions. That's her focus.
I tend to be more like that.
Right, and I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think it's how do you operate best. I wish I was more like that, because having a lot on your plate pulls you in a lot of directions, and it can disappoint people. You can't give as much to one thing, and people might not understand that. So it comes with its challenges, but it's just the way that I'm wired.
How do you manage that disappointment when you know there's other people who wish they could have more of your time or more of your commitment or maybe more of your investment dollars or whatever it might be? How do you manage that those expectations?
I'm a pleaser by nature, so it's hard for me. You know, if I disappoint someone, it really hits me. I can't just walk away from something like that. It really hits me. So that's the first thing. But one thing that I do is if I have a big goal, I'm writing a book, I'm running a big race, I'm launching a business, you're launching a podcast, whatever. I tell those closest to me that I'm going out of balance. Like, I got to really dig into this book. I have a 6-week deadline. I'll say to my wife, like, I just want you to know I'm going to be working really late over the next six weeks or months or whatever to complete this task. When that's over, I go back to balance. But whenever you have a big goal, you have to go out of balance,
of course, right,
to do it. And I try to tell people closest to me that so they know what's going on. And I don't want to feel guilty. And I don't want my wife to resent me. So I communicate that all the time. I just signed up for this race. The next 6 months are going to be a little bit crazy. And then when it's over, I over-index in the sharing part that I missed while I was going for the goal.
Do you do the same thing with your kids? Like, are your kids involved in that decision-making process and knowing when and where dad's going to be and how much time I can give you versus how much time I have to dedicate here?
I don't give them that much power to be in the decision-making process, but I do share the journeys with them. So, you know, we have a lot of family dinners. That's a great place for them to listen and to share. But really for my wife and I mean, I'll share what's going on very openly, good and bad, at dinner, and my kids can hear it and they can ask questions. And but I don't ask them. You know, I don't empower them to make those kind of decisions.
Right, it's not their choice.
Right.
I mean, you're the parent for a reason.
Yeah.
Which I think in society is kind of interesting because I've seen a shift maybe from the time that I was young in that more and more we're seeing parents who are turning to their children for the answers and solutions and what do you think we should do? And that's the reverse. That's not how it should be in my mind.
And I mean, there's times and place for that, I believe. And I'm not an expert in parent. I'm a work in progress, just like you.
All of us, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times I find when I ask my kids that question, like, hey, guys, what do you think? They might give an answer that I don't want to hear. And then they feel like they weren't heard because, well, we're not doing that. You know, so.
You feel like you're teeing them up or setting them up? Is that what you're saying?
I feel like if you ask your kids if they want something or if they have an opinion or more specifically, if like, do you guys want to do this? If you ask a question and they give an answer to the question you asked, you have to deliver on that promise.
Sure. Yeah, and don't ask questions you don't want the answer to.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I mean, listen, I am also inclusive in having our kids. Hey guys, we're going to go away this year for the summer. Where Mom and I are thinking of these 3 places. You know, which would you rather go to and why? Is a different kind of thing than saying, you know, hey, should we, do you want to run this race?
Right. Or should I write a book?
All right.
Yeah. So when you're talking about family dinners, I think that's another thing that seems to be going away more and more. And that's one thing that I've made a commitment to doing as well, is just making sure that we sit around the dinner table, we talk and we discuss and we laugh and we tease each other and we just have a good time. How do you make that work personally with your crazy schedule, with your wife's crazy schedule, I'm sure? Is it that you just carve it out? Is it like, is that the expectation and the standard is there, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that because, you know, a lot of people, when this topic comes up, say, oh, I don't have the time, or I have to work or whatever. And I totally get that. But most people play life on defense. So they allow their calendars to fill up with other people's requests for their time. They're playing defense. They're saying yes to all these late night things or whatever. And I did that too when I was young. I mean, there's a time and place for that. In your 20s, maybe your 30s. I'm 53. So I want to take control of my time. And I want to put more on my plate of what I love to do with the people I love to do them with. And so I say no to a lot of things. And, you know, my day stops, not every day, but if I'm not traveling, or I'll say no to meetings, calls, Zoom appointment, whatever, at 4 or 5 o'clock. It shuts down. And that window from 5 to 8, which is precious. And by the way, you don't have an infinite amount of time with this. You know, our kids are 12, 11, 12, oldest. They're, 4 or 5 years. You know, that's not that much time.
It really
and then
isn't.
Those opportunities, you don't get them back. They're off, college, entrepreneurs, working for, you know, military, whatever they do, you don't get it back. So I'm very aware of that. So I try to make a hard stop at 5 o'clock. And I also take inventory of, like, you know, if we haven't had a family dinner in a week or something, we're aware of it. It's not, we don't let that much time try to get in between those things.
What do you say to somebody? Because I know I hear this little voice in the back of my head when people hear things like that, and they may not be in the same position as you or me, and they think to themselves, well, that must be nice for you, but I have to do X, Y, and Z, and I would like to make family dinner work, or I'd like to have more time for myself, but ...
I've been in that situation, so I know exactly what that feels like. And like I said, in your 20s and 30s, it's different than as you get older. But even if you're older, and, you know, I think if that's the case, you have the night shift, you can't do it, you have to work 2 jobs, whatever the situation is, there's other ways to create that time. So some of the things that I do, and again, I'm just using me as an example because I can't react to what's in a book or whatever.
Sure, yeah. It's just your life experiences.
Right. Well, I'll pull my kids out of school one time a year and go and surprise them and say, individually, we're going out for lunch. I'll go on one-on-one trips with each of one of my kids. These are things I do. I go on a one-on-one trip with each one of my kids. I pull them out of school one time a year and just surprise them for lunch. We go for family walks on the weekends in the morning. So there's other ways to get that, at least for me, when I'm traveling. I gave like 70 speeches 2 years ago, which is,
really,
when you add it all up on the travel, that's like 140, 150 days on the road.
No doubt.
And then there's other obligations, weddings, etc., that happen, family. So when you all of a sudden I'm 200 days I'm away of 365 days, and I just said that I'm cutting that. That's unacceptable. So, you know, you as you evolve, Ryan, your life system evolves. So when I'm in my 20s, I was starting a business. I was eating dinner at 11 o'clock at night. I would work till 11. Now, I was always carving out time for myself during the day because I didn't want to resent my boss or resent anybody for taking away things I love to do. I would always leave for a lunch to run, but I was working late. Now, I'm having dinner at 5 o'clock. You know, I can't watch the football games around the clock like I was watching. I don't have the time. My day, everyone says, like, we have 24 hours a day. No, I start the day with 22 hours. Because an hour of it is getting my kids ready for school, picking up at my carpool. I have a 21-hour day.
Right.
3 of it's obligated.
It's
Monday
done.
Right, it's done. So you have to be really efficient with the hours that you have. So you have to say no to things that were filling up your full plate then. When you're adding 3 more hours on top of it, something has to give. So your system has to evolve. Your life system, every 5 years, approximately for me, my system is changing. You know, my time is changing. My habits are changing. My routines are changing. Otherwise, you're just going through life like this, you know, and it goes fast and you're not evolving. I want to go through life like this.
Sure.
I want to live like, you know, like constantly like challenging myself, like you mentioned earlier, and not saying like, yes, man, I was 80% of what I could have been. Like, nobody wants that. So you have to really take some inventory. Businesses, every year, they have a year-end meeting. How do we do? Are we on budget? Were we on plan? They take inventory. They do a review with each one of the employees. They project and plan for the next year, and that plan changes. But as individuals, we just kind of coast. Yeah, we set some New Year's resolutions.
They
They
last for 30 days, and that's
not family planning. That's not inventory. That's not life optimization. You know, like if you really want to win at this, you have to look at it, plan it, think about it, talk about it, schedule it, learn. You know, like you gave me some great ideas before the camera even went on about just how you're doing it. You mentioned something. It was a throwaway for you. You said my kids are helping me set up the bunk beds for an event. And I was like, man, yes, of course they are. Your kids are learning that this is a family business. Everyone's involved. They have to contribute. You know, this is part of I mean, there's so much there. And it was a throwaway for you. Yeah, my kids are just helping me. You know, they're doing the bunk beds. And there's so much more to that than what you even said. And it made me think, like, immediately, I want to get my kids more involved, not just in the talking at dinner about what I'm doing, in the actual doing. You know, I was signing books the other day. My kids should have been there opening the books, putting the author signatures, you know, like, why am I doing that myself? And that opened up a new lane for me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. So what's interesting when we talk about this thing where we know it's easy for you know, I don't have that time. I'd be willing to bet that your calendar is infinitely more busy than mine, and probably significantly busier than most of the men who listen to this podcast. And yet you find the time. Like I was talking with Andy Frisilla. You know Andy Frisilla.
Yeah, sure.
And I told him something when we did a podcast together about his schedule, and I said, you know, if I had your schedule, it would just I would crumble. And he says, absolutely you would. And he wasn't saying it arrogantly or anything like that. What he was saying is that he's developed, like you said, the systems in order to manage his workload, and he's more capable of doing it because he's been doing it longer. He's developed more efficient, more effective systems than maybe other people like myself have. So how do you develop life systems, and then how do you know where you need to address or tweak or adjust or move or pivot or maneuver?
So just taking it to the most basic level, we always hear about morning routines, right? And the importance of a morning routine, and that's huge. But I'm a much bigger believer in the evening routine. So my day starts the night before.
Okay.
So I start my day by mapping out, I'll show it to you on a piece of paper, what my day looks like the next day to the hour. And then when I wake up, I just follow the script. Because nobody here, none of your listeners, none of the guys, no one, myself included, is good enough to just wake up and wing it.
You probably could. I just don't think you're going to be as efficient as you, right?
Right. I mean,
you'll hit 80%, maybe, right, or 70 or whatever.
Right. So I follow the script. So my day's already like, I'm just following. Now, of course, things change. There's flexibility in that. There's arrows that come at us that throw us off course all the time. But that's the first thing that I do. The second thing that I do, and I mentioned it earlier, is I've gotten really good at saying no. So my circle has shrunk as I've gotten older. My network's gotten wider, but my circle has gotten smaller of who I actually spend time with. I can't tell you the last time I've gone out to dinner. I used to go out to dinner a lot. It's gotten a lot smaller. I'm saying no to things that I would have said yes to. My priorities have changed a lot. I've sacrificed things that I would love to do that I can't do because of commitments, you know.
Do you feel like when you have those things, do you get this fear of missing out and have regrets because you aren't doing this even though you've made a commitment to do something else that's in conflict with it?
I used to. I've gotten really good at surrendering that. And, you know, I can't be there. I don't dwell on those kind of things. That also is a skill, because if everyone's doing something and you can't go, of course, human nature.
I just have to turn off Instagram.
Right.
I can't look at pictures from that thing that everybody else is doing that I'm not.
I just like to tell myself there's a lot of things that I am able to do. And I schedule. I literally lay out my whole year. And is this practical for everybody? I think it is. Can I share my system?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So
I want you to share
I
it.
lay out. I've invested a lot of money in life optimization. Because again, with 4 kids, multiple businesses, home, it's a lot, man. It's overwhelming. And so how do you optimize that? No one, let me take one step back. My dad owned the plumbing supply house. My grandfather was born incredibly poor. He had 12 brothers and sisters. 6 of them died before the age of 2 because they couldn't afford medical care. He was in the U.S. Army, fought in World War I. He was gassed, missing in action, survived, settled in Brooklyn, where he lived in a house with my father and my grandfather and my father's great-grandfather. So 3 generations lived in one house where they opened a paint shop, and they lived in the house and they had a paint shop and whatever. We're sitting here in this insane environment. I'm 1 generation removed from that.
Yeah, good point.
I'm 1 generation
really good point.
removed from that. So we're all one idea, 1 referral, 1 connection away from changing the course of our life. The reason why I brought that up is no one talked about how to live in my house. No one talked about money in my house. No one talked about, my dad worked 6.5 days a week. He was an amazing dad, but we didn't talk about systems. So I have no idea. What do you do when you get money? What do you do when you have kids? I don't know. So I've invested in a system and people that know how to optimize. And here's my system. First of all, I lay as much of the year out in advance with my wife before, in November and December.
So you do that towards the end of the year. What do we have coming up in 2022?
What do we have? Do we want to go away? When do we want to go away? What do we want our kids to do? Are we signing them up for soccer? We're going to have a date night. We go through, and I put as much of the races. I like to do long races. What does my race schedule look like? The one-on-one trips with my kids. I might not have the date, but I want to go in February. I'm going to take them up to somewhere cold. I have an idea. And I put it down on a calendar. It's once it's down, that goes down first. The things that I want to do, they go on the calendar first. That's playing life on offense.
Yeah.
Okay? Everything gets filled around. Those are non-negotiables. And then so that's the first thing. And that's easy. Anyone can do that. It could be I want to run the New York Marathon. It could be, you don't have to have 20 things.
Right.
But you want to have the things that are important to you. So when you look back at the year, you're like, man, I accomplished this. Not I didn't have the time to do what I love to do. And then I have 3 things that I do. There's an old Japanese ritual called a misogi. And the notion around a misogi is you do 1 year-defining thing every year. So if I asked you, what'd you do in 2013, 15, 17? If I asked anybody here, what'd you do 8 days ago, they probably couldn't tell me. You want to be able to look back and be like, this year, I launched this podcast. I traveled here. I learned jiu-jitsu, whatever, every year. So you have 1 big year-defining thing. So I always have that. This year coming up, it's a race called Ultraman for me, 2022. Then every other weekend, every other month, I do something. I call it Kevin's Rule. My friend Kevin, a police officer, gave it to me, that I normally wouldn't have done on a weekend. So just follow me. How old are you?
I'm 40.
Okay, so you're 40. So let's say every other month, for 1 day of the weekend, so 6 times a year, you do something you normally wouldn't have done. So instead of, watching the Georgia football game, I'm going to take my kids fishing. I'm going to go to a lecture. I'm going to learn how to bake, whatever. If you did that from 40 until you're 70, I'm just asking for a couple hours every other month. You'll have 180, right? 6 a year for 30 years, 40 to 70, 180 life experiences that you wouldn't have had if you were just watching the football games. 180 life experiences, and you'll have 30 insane things. And then the third, so I do those two things, super simple. The rest of my life's the same. But I have one event, 6 mini adventures, and then I try to add 3 to 4 new habits a year. Maybe I'm drinking more water. Maybe I'm never going to be late to a meeting. Maybe I'm going to respond to every email before the end of the day. If I can layer in these winning habits cumulatively from 30 to 70, add these adventures, and go about life, everything else the same, you're going to destroy life. Like, you are going to, man, kill it. And that's all I do. And people are like, oh, I can't believe, how'd you do? I planned it. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Made it happen.
I just did it. It's not like I'm doing so much. I'm just doing big things and little things consistently. Everything else is the same. And that's how I live my life.
Do you have a process for incorporating new things that you learn? Because I'll hear from a lot of guys, and I'm included in this as well, I get to have great conversations with men like you and hundreds of other men, and I get to meet a bunch of people, and I have access to a lot of information. And sometimes it gets so overwhelming, and it's like, I don't want this conversation to go to waste, or I don't want that book that I read about scheduling to go to waste, or that conversation I had over here to go to waste. How do you take what needs to be taken or extracted from the conversation and then implement it into your daily practices?
That's another great question. I feel like if I can even implement 20% of the nuances that I hear or come across, it's a win. So first of all, I don't beat myself up for like, oh, Ryan told me to do this and I didn't, I don't beat myself up about that. I try to weave them into those things in as much as I can. I'm a trial and error guy too. So just because I'm saying do one big thing and 6 mini adventures, like, who am I to say that? Tell someone how to live their life. But if I heard that and it resonated with me from someone else, I would try it. And if it didn't work, I wouldn't do it. But I don't believe everything I hear, especially from marketers or from someone that has a bazillion Instagram followers. Doesn't mean they're qualified to give advice that's going to make my life better or not. But I'll listen and I'll try it. My diet is a compilation of me trying multiple things through 53 years on Earth. And to find out what works the best for me, what gives me the most amount of energy, what gives me the best shot to extend my life to be with my kids, what gives me the clearest thought. So it's trial and error. Some people say meat, some people say dairy, some say no meat, no dairy. I don't know. You could get anyone to tell you anything, but I've tried it all until I've gotten a system that works for me.
Yeah, I like that process of experimentation. I even think about your experiences with your 2 books, with Goggins and then Living with Monks. It's like, that's pretty impressive that you think, okay, I'm going to go experiment. I'm going to see how this works. Are there lessons that you extracted that have stood over the past couple of years that you're still implementing from either Goggins or your time living with those monks?
100%. I don't retain information well from reading. Mm-hmm. I retain information well from experiencing. So I could read a book on cold weather survival and make a note of layering and this and that.
Right.
But if I go on one hike in the winter and get my ass is freezing, totally. I'm never gonna forget how to stay warm.
Yeah.
So when you're referring to living with the monks, I went and I lived on a monastery with 8 monks that had been there for 50 years. The reason why I went was I had invested so much in the physical side of my life, trainers, marathons, gyms, but I really neglected the spiritual side. And part of being an entrepreneur, and I'm an entrepreneur by nature, is figuring out how to speed up the process. How do you get from A to B the fastest? So if I want to improve my spirituality, like, who are the masters? I don't want to read 15 books. That'll take me 5 years.
Right.
Let me go live with the monks for a week and I'll figure it out. So I did. And I went and I lived on this monastery. And I think the biggest takeaway for me that I incorporate into my life, as you just asked, is surprisingly my relationship with time. When people think of relationships, they think of them in terms of people. How's your relationship with your kids or your wife or your partner?
Right.
But they don't think of your relationship in terms of money. What's your relationship with money, which I think is incredibly important to have an understanding of what does money mean to me? What do I want to do with it? You know?
Well, we all have that relationship by default, but is it serving us, right?
Right.
Or do we know what it is?
Right. I think a lot of people don't even really know what their relationship with money is. They know they want it, but like if I was going to give the audience, someone here, $10 million, what would you do with it?
Yeah.
Most people couldn't even,
they'd be back to where they were within a matter of months or years or whatever. Right.
So the relationship with time is another element. So what I realized is I used to think in terms of minutes, years, and that kind of stuff. Calendar. Time to me was, I'll do that in 3 years or in 5 years. But it's really moments. So, for example, I'm 53. I love summers. The average American lives to be 78. So if I'm average, I have 24 summers left. Okay? 20. That makes my summers.
That's scary.
Now you want to go and tell me, you want to go invite me to some kind of, something for a week in the summer. Like maybe if I'm 30, I do that. But now, what's the best?
24 left.
Right. Like I want to teach my kids to wakeboard or whatever. So that's. And by the way, I live on a lake in the summer. I don't see a lot of 70-year-olds wakeboarding, water skiing. Like 27 summers, but or 23 or 24 summers. But how many of them are doing what I love to do now?
Sure.
That window's even smaller.
Yeah. Sure.
We mentioned before, my son is 12. He'll be off to college in 5-6 years. So what is that? That's you got 300, 200 something weekends. That might seem like a lot. That's not a lot.
It doesn't seem like a lot.
It's finite. It's not infinite. My parents, 90 years old. I live here. They live in Florida. If I see them 2 times a year, and they live 5 years, I don't have 5 years. I have 10 visits. So what I realized from the monastery was how precious that time is. And it's really forced me to be super present, to really be where my feet are. So right now, you and I are having a conversation. I'm not thinking about what am I doing at 4 o'clock. I'm not like, this is it. When you tell me it's a wrap, it's a wrap. And then I'm going to look at my calendar from last night and go to whatever's next on my schedule.
You're going to show me that treehouse first.
Yeah, I'll show you the treehouse.
And then you can do that.
But I'm really, really present. So the lesson wasn't like, you have to do this. It wasn't what to do. It was how to do it. Like, be present. Like the monks monotasked. If they had to clean the sanctuary, they would do it till it was 110% clean. That was the only job. There wasn't music playing and distractions, and I'm on my phone. I'm cleaning the sanctuary. And that's what they did. And every task was done with that kind of discipline, intent, and soul.
Wow.
Like pouring their soul into it. And so what I learned was more of a spirit of how I wanted to live my life. I want to pour my soul into whatever we're doing. I can't control how the audience is going to react to this. You might post this on Instagram and be like, this guy's an idiot. I have no control on that. Now I can't let it bother. I hope people enjoy this. I hope there's nuggets of value. Not everything we talk about is going to resonate, but if there's 2 or 3 things people can apply, this is a good investment in their time. All I can do is offer the best responses to our dialogue and conversation and move on. But I have to honor the commitment of you flying all the way here to come and give me your time. I'm not just giving you my time. You're equally giving. My time is no more valuable than your time. Your time, you took more time. I owe that to you and the audience. So if we put that same effort, and honestly, I try to do that in everything. I'm not perfect. I'm not. So there's times when I'm tired, when I have an off day, but I really, honest to God, try to live my life with so much soul that I owe that's a lesson from the monastery.
I saw your sign over here, your top Jesseisms, and one of them was, I think it says honor the process or something, which I think is what you're hitting on right now. Like if you honor something, you give it your full devotion, your full attention, you're fully present in that thing when you honor it. So I don't know that much about monks, admittedly. So this might be an ignorant question or the way even that I word it. So from the outside looking in, I think, well, why? Like, can't they take that ability to focus and be present and be clear on what they're trying to do, and then like turn it outward and serve and like have a life? Like, do you feel at all like that may have been a wasted life? That's where I think the ignorant part of the question comes in. I don't quite know how to word it, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
I think that, and this is a question that came up many times on the monastery, I think that these guys felt called to do what they were doing, and they chose it. They surrender everything, all their money, their
right.
Everything, driver's license, everything. Like,
do they have relationships, romantic relationships, anything like that? No.
No.
That's so hard for me to wrap my head around.
It's very hard, but they were happy. Like the one thing we all have in common is we want to feel good. They felt good. This made them feel good. And I don't know the why. I think everybody has their own reason. And what was interesting was, I was like, you would think, well, did these guys grow up spiritual? Did they grow up religious?
Right.
One guy was a lifeguard. Like,
really?
Like a high school lifeguard
really?
Who just, decided that this is what he wanted to do and this is for him. And so everybody has, I guess, their own reasons.
Is it the purpose to serve a higher being, a higher calling? Is that really the purpose behind it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really, really interesting dynamic.
It's interesting because I feel the same too. I feel like I'm called to serve a higher power. I choose not to do it that way. So I guess, we all have very similar, when you strip everything else away, we probably all have very similar things that we want. Happiness, you said, fulfillment. I guess we all just find it in different paths.
Yeah. I think everybody wants to feel accomplished. Mm-hmm. Like you said, happy, accomplished, fulfilled, and we all get it different ways.
What about important, meaningful? Is that something that was on their mind?
I think so. Yeah. These guys, could you imagine being basically isolated for 50 years?
No. Like, you don't even need to finish the question.
Well, here's something interesting. You know what they did to keep the lights on at the monastery? What their job was?
How's that?
They were the largest, the monastery I went to, they were the largest breeders and trainers of German shepherds in the country. And they are they're called the monks of Neuski, and they are world-renowned dog trainers. So I was around, there were 12 German shepherds, full-grown, a puppy litter, and I got to watch these guys train the dogs while I was there.
Sure.
And I've never in my life seen anything like it. It was like watching Michael Jordan teach someone how to play basketball. It was just, first of all, I know you had a German Shepherd, right?
Yeah, we just lost him about a week ago.
Yeah. That was a touching story, man.
Rough.
A touching story, yeah.
Rough.
Did you get the dog from a breeder?
We did. I'm going to have to look into the monks, though, for the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got him from a breeder 4 years ago from a family friend, and they bred German Shepherds, and, man, we just fell in love with that dog very, very quickly. And, we lost him in 48 hours.
That is unbelievable.
We took him, we put him to bed, and he was kind of like stumbling. It was really weird, almost like he was drunk. And he fell out of my son's bed that night, and he wouldn't get, his hind legs weren't working. The next day, his front or hind legs weren't working. We took him into the vet. They said, you got to take him to the neurologist. And he ended up having an inoperable brain tumor that was causing his legs not to work, and he couldn't see, and his internal organs were on the fritz. So, yeah, we had to make that decision, man. It was rough.
It's really tough. But were the kids were attached to the dog as well?
Super attached.
Yeah.
Super attached. So when we had to tell the kids, it was a cry session for all of us. We were in the living room, and they were watching a show, and we said, hey, turn it off, and we have to tell you. And I think they knew even before we said it, because obviously the dog was at the hospital, but that was rough, man.
Oof.
But that goes back to, I think, what you were saying earlier about the family meetings and the family dinners and being so connected. And if you do that stuff, the hardships, which are going to come, are more manageable because we're all bonded. We can communicate. We do communicate. It isn't out of the ordinary to deal with these things and go through them together and talk about them. And I think that's one of the things that you're doing very well with your family as well.
I think, the lesson with having your dog, which is super, it's just so brutal for the kids, for everybody. But, disappointment's been stripped from kids.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
So, everybody makes every team. There's participation trophies. You celebrate everything gets celebrated. And in a lot of ways, from when I grew up, probably the same when you grew up, it wasn't like that. We had cuts. We had, you didn't make it. You got ridiculed. You had to deal with it. And disappointment is a part of it, and experiencing those kind of things, as tough as they are and as terrible as they are, and I don't wish them on anybody, builds character, builds grit. It's part of it, I don't want my kids to be disappointed at all.
Course.
It's the most painful thing. But as a parent, we have to let them experience it. I'm going to give you an example on a much smaller level than what you guys went through. But my son has never played baseball. He's 12 years old. He's like, he does other stuff, but he just never took to it. Like, we tried it maybe at 4 or 5. But here in Atlanta, when kids are 12, they're like professional baseball players. They play year round.
Big time.
I've never seen the level. It's crazy. And then all of a sudden, my son's like, I want to play baseball this year. And I'm like, baseball with the other kids? Like, what do
the
you
kids
mean?
have been playing for 10 years?
Yeah, like with the Braves? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, I want to be part of the team. I want to sign up and I want to play. I'm like, well, okay. So I started to research to see if there was like a beginner's league. There's no beginner's leagues here. In 12, you're either playing 12-year-olds or you're in the major leagues. Like there's no in between. So we sign him up. And I think and this is hard for a parent, I think he was probably the last pick in the whole draft. Like, they didn't even pick him. It was like, there's one kid left. You're on this team.
Like
kind of thing. Yeah.
Throw him over there.
And, but I was so proud of him that, like, he put himself in this position where he knew it was going to be embarrassing. Now, kids are tough at that age.
Oh, ruthless.
They're ruthless, man.
Yeah, yeah.
So he put himself in that position. We're rolling? Put himself in that position, was okay being embarrassed. And I said to him, you now have an opportunity to have the biggest impact on the team. You can congratulate everybody. You can out-hustle everybody. You can have the best attitude. You can, you might not ever touch the ball, swinging the ball, but you could still be an example for all the kids that, look, I've never played before, but I had the guts to come out here and do it. It was really powerful lesson, man, like as a dad for him. Now, that's not the point about the disappointment that I was saying is he's putting himself in a position where he's going to experience that, and I'm not protecting him. I'm not saying, no. Let's go play for a year. Let's do this. Let's just play at the house. You want to get thrown at, you're going to experience it, and you're going to have to learn to deal with it. Now, here's one way to deal with it where you could be a hero of the league.
Right.
But you're going to have to make that decision.
I think that's the difference, though, that a lot of kids don't get is they don't get opportunities for disappointment. And if they do, a lot of them don't have a person in their life, whether it's their mother or their father or a coach or a mentor or whoever, grandfather, who's going to help them navigate the difficulty. Because if your son didn't have you in his life talking about, here's a healthy way to deal with disappointment, here's a healthy way to deal with challenge, they're not going to get it. It's going to be miserable, and then they're going to run from challenge the rest of their life. And I think that's what happened for a lot of people. They run away from challenge because they don't know how to handle it correctly.
I agree.
And you've been doing that. I mean, we're talking about all the challenges and the Misogi, yeah. Misogi. You've been doing that, so you're modeling that for them, and they see, oh, well, Dad's doing this, and he doesn't have any, quote unquote, right to do that, and yet he's still putting himself in that position, and that's a powerful thing, I think, for kids to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we every summer we try to set a goal for the kids. Everyone has to pick one thing. So like for my daughter who's 5, she wanted to learn how to ride her bike this summer.
Mm,
For my son, he wanted to learn how to wakeboard. My other son wanted to swim across the with different things.
right.
But I think those starting those habits and those goals really start to build an inner dialogue for the kids that hopefully will last beyond me generationally, of the importance of having a goal, going after it and having something and not just settling for where we are in our life right now. And I'm the same way. I mean, I'm very goal oriented. As soon as I finish something, I'm not a big celebrator. Like you can look around my office. I don't have one marquee jet hat. There's no Zico. Like none of my business accomplishments live. They're done. And I go on to the next thing. And I think that's how you really build that life resume that, is like, okay, we had a couple of events last year. Okay, that was last year.
Right.
What does this year look like?
Right.
And like, I'm not going to celebrate. I'll celebrate it for a minute, but I'm really looking about what's next. And I want my kids to think like that. I want them to think like that. If a lot of times, like my brother said to me, we were talking about my son who was swimming, and he asked me how my son was doing, and I'm like, he's good. He's a good swimmer. He doesn't have that eye of the tiger. And my brother's like, well, as long as he's happy. And I'm like, no, he'd be happy eating Haagen-Dazs, watching TV all day.
For
like,
sure.
I don't
Happy isn't the goal.
Happy's not the goal. Potential
Sure.
is the goal. Like living up to your potential and and milking life, I think, is one of the goals. I mean, everybody is. And I want my kids to live up to their potential, and that can't come from me. It has to come from their own desire. If it's my dream, it's not going to happen for them. It has to be their dream.
I think one of the things that we need to do a good job with as far as being fathers is, and you said something interesting about, hey, I'm having a kid. He's just like me, right? Is we can instill values and work ethic and morals and all of these things and systems and tools. But then I think it's important that we honor the path that they want to take, but we just show them how to go full bore into that. And that's been one of the things that's been interesting for me is that, I've got my oldest son who is really heavy into strength training and powerlifting. He's got his first meet coming up later this year. And he's like, Dad, I don't like jiu-jitsu as much as I like training. And first I was like, oh, really? Like I was looking forward to doing this as like our thing, and I was kind of disappointed. And then I just thought, he doesn't have to do it'd be good, but he's doing this. And that's his thing. And then my second son, man, he just loves to draw. He does some coding classes online. He loves it. And I don't really care about all that stuff, but he is in it. I'm like, cool. I'm in it too. Like if I got to help that and help him go all the way in that one thing, that's what I'm going to do. So instilling those values and things, but also honoring the path that they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I found that hard at first.
Oh, for sure.
Real hard.
Because you think your way is the right way.
Right. But I'm telling you, man, watching this baseball journey, and it was hard. I couldn't even sleep the first night for the game. I was nervous for my son.
Yeah.
To get like bullied or ridiculed or there's a crowd like laughed at.
Yeah.
I told my wife, I'm like, I can't even go to the game. But watching it, it's been like a really cool thing to watch.
How's he doing with it?
Just even to watch the kids support him, has been really cool. Not every kid, but the kids that do, really cool to see. He's having fun.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. And like, that's the thing. Like, it's not my experience, it's his thing.
How do you guys, I've been thinking about this question and I was thinking about what I wanted to talk with you about. Your family dynamic is so much different than ours because I work at home. You're here a lot too. And my wife is home full time. She's a homemaker. She teaches our children homeschooling. and so she's always there. I'm really interested in the dynamic between you and your wife, where she is so passionate with her career and her other things that she's doing, and how that works for you within the dynamic of your home. It's just interesting because it's so different than what it is. I imagine that our wives are equally passionate, just in different routes, just different avenues.
Well, for starters, my wife has her own business. It's a very successful business, and that's in itself is a unique dynamic to deal with.
Right.
Usually, I don't know if the spotlight is always on the male. That's not a fair thing to say at all, but as a man, when the spotlight is really on your wife, it's as a man, it's an interesting dynamic.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Is that threatening at all?
I love it.
Or has it been?
I'm happy for her, and no, it hasn't for me. It's just an interesting dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
To go to a dinner, and everyone's like, really wants to talk to your wife or whatever, and you're just kind of like sitting there, and you're just like,
just hanging out.
Yeah, like, okay, been an hour. I'm here too. But it's really cool to see, and I'm happy for her.
Yeah.
But that carries over to the home dynamic too, because she has her own business, her own responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
She's the sole owner of her business. But she too stops the day at a certain time, takes the kids to school. Like, she also, I don't know how my wife does this, honestly. She's like Wonder Woman, but she's able to separate that and still prioritize the family. So, she's home today. So she's here a lot of the times, and she's very invested in the kids. So, her life, it's not what you would think. These two entrepreneurs, they're working around the clock.
That's what I'm kind of curious about.
We both became entrepreneurs so we could have our own schedule. And part of the reason why I think people become entrepreneurs for different reasons. One is make your own rules, make your own, have your own business. That's all. And that's true. For me, it was about time. I wanted, like, I don't want to go to meetings. I want to wear this.
I'm with you.
Like, I haven't put on a suit in 5 years. I want to be able to live. I want to train. This is what I like to do. I like to run. I like to bike. I like to swim. I like adventure. I like cold water. I love my family and friends. That's what I like to do. So why would I press the gas on the entrepreneurial button to get more? Like, we're all wired for more. More isn't better.
Mm-hmm.
More isn't better. My friend likes to say better's better. So we both are entrepreneurs, but I think we both did that so we could have our time. So,
yeah, that's good, because I was going to ask.
Might not answer what
No, it's good. I'm just curious about how the dynamic works, and you did answer it because of what your motive was for starting your businesses was to have the time and make sure you hit on the priorities. And then you also hit on something. You said, more isn't better, but then earlier you said, and this might be a little bit of a conflict, and I'm curious about it, that when you finish and complete one thing, you're on to the next. And my wife has asked me this question, and she doesn't ask it rudely, maybe sometimes, but she says, when is it going to be enough? And my response is never. But there's also a detriment a little bit in that you can get so focused on what is next and forget about, what you have and what's already available. Do you wrestle with that conflict at all?
Well, I don't think you ever want to give up what you have for what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're never going to lose sight of what you have just because for what you want. I think there's two different buckets. I think the bucket of chasing the money bucket and the work bucket. I mean, again, everyone's wired differently. Is one thing, and then the other, because it all comes with a sacrifice. Work is less time for this. Play, train, less time for this.
Right.
I was like this early on, and I was never like that. I've always been like this, going back and forth. But to me, it's not when is it ever going to be enough. To me, is like I have a limited amount of time. I have from this day until, who knows? It could stop here. It could stop here. It's not going all the way forever. So like at some point, let's just say I have this amount of time. It's not about when's it going to stop. To me, it's about how do I maximize this amount of time in the buckets that are important, which are my family, my business, my health, my charity, whatever your buckets are. How do I maximize those key buckets in this amount of time? So I don't look at it as like, when is it enough? I look at it as like, I don't want to blow this. You know, like I'm so excited about this and I want to just milk this. It's like, I'm not a glass half, you know, you hear, oh, Ryan, are you a glass half full man or are you glass half empty? I don't like your attitude. You're a glass half empty guy.
Right.
You know, or this guy's amazing. He's a glass half full guy. I've always been like, man, thank God we have a fucking glass. You know, like, like we have a glass. And now we have a glass. Anything can happen. So that's the way I look at this. It's like we have this opportunity and I don't want to look back and be like, oh my God, man, it was enough. So at 55, I gained 2 pounds a year and I just got, you know, like I operate or try to operate from an underdog mentality. Like it never happened. I don't like to talk about on interviews or giving a talk when people want, that's different. But like, I'm never talking about my business stuff from the past. I'm talking about like, man, this is what I'm doing this year. Mm-hmm. I don't get excited about what happened in the past. Like, oh my God, you're never going to believe it. It's like, this is what I'm going to do this year. That's where the enthusiasm comes from.
That makes sense because it's a lot of people get into that arrival syndrome. You know, they hit some benchmark or milestone or goal and they think, I've arrived, I've made it. And they ride and rest on their laurels for the rest of their lives.
And what's even made it? It's like, you mean to this point of your journey, you've had like, there's all this much left.
Right.
So that's how I look at it. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but that's my approach to it. It's always front view mirror for me. You know, a lot of people that I know, we go out, they're talking about high school and how great they did it in football
like
or
20
whatever.
years ago?
Yeah, it's like there's 7 billion people in the world. Nobody's thinking about your college game from 20 years ago, the third week of the college season when you got a first down.
Right. Just you.
Just you. You know, so I like to, so that's how I operate.
Also, nobody cares about what you're really going to do next. Like, they're so worried and consumed with themselves.
Yeah.
Like, but we spend a lot of time thinking about what other people might think of us or how they'd approach it or how they'd perceive our own goals and objectives.
Of the 7 billion people in the world, where'd you have dinner last night?
I think I had it at the airport.
Okay. So when you were sitting there at dinner at the airport.
Yeah.
How many of the 7 billion people did you think about?
Yeah, none. I thought about 4. Yeah. I thought about you because we're doing this podcast. I thought about my wife. I thought about my kids.
Right.
Okay, so like 6 or 7.
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
Yes.
Right. Right. So, I mean, it's not a knock to anybody else, but I mean, like, come on, man. We think about our like I said, our inner circle, which is gets smaller and smaller as you get older. And it's just hilarious. You think everyone's thinking about you. Oh, my God, man. I just put out this book. Everyone's going to be talking about it. No one cares. They read the book. Maybe they left a comment, and then they're thinking about their taxes.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
But
that's a liberating thought, though,
too. It's amazing. It's so good.
Because then you could just do life the way you want to do it.
You can mess up as much as you want and understand that no one is going to think about it for more than 1 second.
Yes.
You know, in 100 years from now, there'll be a whole new wave of humans on this planet. Mm-hmm. None of us will be here.
Right.
I don't know. Last time I checked, you're not living to 140.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, maybe, but I'm not living to 153. There'll be another podcaster talking to some, you know, not to categorize you as a podcaster, but there'll be another interview. There'll be another this. There'll be another that. And they're never even going to give this moment where we're all in right now. They're never going to give it 1 minute of thought, which is just it's
a crazy thing.
Liberating, like you said, thought. Yeah.
I've told people before, you know, if I died on the plane ride home, knock on wood, there'd be like people would be upset for a week because be like, oh, where's Ryan's podcast? And then they would just find another one, and that's it. That's all. Like, and the only thing that matters is this conversation, because this will have an impact on both of us and the people maybe listening. But again, they're going to find other podcasts and the other people in our lives, like our family, our friends.
This
our
is why
circle.
it's liberating. One, it should make you not have fear to be embarrassed, which is super liberating when you get over your fear of being embarrassed. But to go out and try something, to go out and say, like, it's who cares if I fail? You know, no one's going to care. So that's one of the reasons why it's liberating. And then if you think about, like, who's had the biggest impact in our lives, I'm not talking about our inner circle, but like Steve Jobs had a very big impact in my life. He created a device that I can take pictures on, communicate with, send emails, get stock information, everything on this one thing. I can push a button and say, what's the weather in Tokyo? And it's going to tell me. He created that. I can't tell you the last time I thought about Steve Jobs. Right. Steve Jobs isn't even on my radar. I respect him. Amazing. He's not even on my radar.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs. Like, you know. Like,
and you are not Steve Jobs.
No, I'm not even close to Steve Jobs. I'm a numbskull. There's people that have done things that are just like changed humanity. The Wright Brothers. You know, I go on an air. I don't think about the Wright Brothers. These guys changed the way we travel. The major accomplishments. It's not even on my radar. You know what I'm thinking about? Is my son going to catch the pop fly today? Are my kids going to have a good time at school? You know? And then you think about the other stuff. How many followers do I have? Did I gain any followers? How many people are commenting? This joker doesn't even know me, and he's like, "What are you talking about? You don't even know me." You know, like it's
you read my comments earlier today.
It's just crazy.
It is crazy.
It's crazy.
It's insanity. We have these amazing devices and technology and information, and we just use it in such a weird. I say we because I am included in that.
Me too.
We use it in such a weird way.
Me too. I mean, I said to my wife the other day, I'm like, you know, like I had gotten over, I don't pay a ton of attention to it, but I had gotten like an extra, clicked up like 1,000. Like it gone from like, 400 to 500 followers. And I'm like, this made me feel good.
Yes.
And I'm like, I said to my wife, I'm like, I just got another, like up to that next 1,000 range.
Yeah.
And it made me feel good. And I'm like, that's insane.
Why should I feel good about that? Totally. I've had that same thought.
53-year-old man. And then I was like, imagine if I was 18.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
That's dangerous.
Yes.
I'm 53 and I feel like this.
Well, and not only are you're an accomplished 53-year-old, like highly accomplished, and still getting 1,000 people to follow you is still getting that dopamine rush going for you.
What the hell did they figure out at Instagram that made this thing?
It's just the psychology of it, right?
Right. I like to dig into that actually and understand human nature a little bit better because I mean, it's just nuts. It's just nuts.
It is nuts. Well, maybe we'll save that for part 2.
Okay, that sounds good.
Brother, I really appreciate this conversation.
Yeah.
I told you before we hit record, just doing it in person is so much better. Because there's so many little nuances and things that you can catch and mannerisms and demeanor, and it's always better like this. So I really appreciate you taking some time to do this with me.
Yeah, and it also, like I said to you, it shows a tremendous amount on your part. You could have just said, hey, man, I'm going to zoom it in. You'd be at home in Maine with the family.
Which was tempting.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be home with the family.
To get and do this, stay overnight, eat at the airport, travel, come in to knock out an hour and a half interview, then pick up and do it all over again and go home, just says a lot about you and how seriously you take the podcast and your guests and what you're doing. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you, man.
Like I said, no one's time is more valuable, and you quadrupled your time more in this effort. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Much appreciated.
Yeah,
all right, let's go check out that treehouse.
Yes, let's do it.